Welcome back to Crash CSS European History. This is our second lecture, and I am your instructor, Fatima. In our previous lesson, we followed the dramatic rise of Napoleon and the storm of wars that swept across Europe under his command. Today, our story begins after the battlefield falls silent, when exhausted rulers attempt something mankind had never truly tried before: peace through balance, not conquest. By 1814, Europe stood broken. For more than 2 decades, war had drained treasuries, shattered armies, ruined cities, and buried millions. Monarchies had been toppled, borders erased, and entire societies shaken by revolutionary ideas. Then Napoleon fell. He abdicated in 1814, returned briefly during the 100 Days, and was finally crushed at Waterloo in 1815. The cannons stopped firing, but fear did not. The victorious powers now faced a terrifying question. How do we prevent another Napoleon? How do we stop revolution from spreading again? And how do we prevent Europe from tearing itself apart once more? To answer this, the rulers of Europe gathered in one magnificent city, Vienna. From every corner of the continent came emperors, kings, and master diplomats. Behind glittering balls and royal ceremonies, they negotiated the fate of nations behind closed doors. Their goal was no longer victory. Their goal was stability, a new European order so carefully balanced that war itself would become unnecessary. Inside the grand halls of Vienna, Europe was transformed into lines on parchment. Maps were spread across tables. Borders were erased, redrawn, and reshaped. Rivers became political weapons. Mountains became strategic shields. Every decision carried the weight of future peace or future disaster. The first great question was France. France had terrorized Europe under Napoleon, yet the victors chose restraint. They forced France back to its old borders from before its empire-building days. They did not destroy it. They feared that humiliation would only create another future war. A wounded France was safer than a vengeful France. Prussia was strengthened with large land gains in Germany and Poland. Austria regained dominance in northern Italy, reclaiming Lombardy and Venetia. Russia expanded deeply into Polish territories, becoming the giant of Eastern Europe. One ancient empire vanished forever, the Holy Roman Empire. In its place rose the German Confederation, a loose association of 39 independent states, designed not for unity, but for weakness. A divided Germany was considered more peaceful than a united Germany. To block future French aggression, the Netherlands and Belgium were merged into one powerful buffer state. Italy, too, remained fragmented. Every decision followed one brutal truth. Justice did not guide the map, power did. Towering above all other diplomats at Vienna stood one man, Prince Clemens von Metternich of Austria. More than any king or emperor, it was his vision that shaped post-Napoleonic Europe. To understand the concert of Europe, one must first understand Metternich's fear of revolution. He had witnessed the French Revolution tear apart monarchy, church, and nobility. To him, freedom did not mean progress. It meant mobs, executions, and chaos. He believed that the masses were dangerous when politicized, and that only absolute monarchy could guarantee civilization. Inside Austria, Metternich ruled through strict censorship, secret police, and surveillance. The press was controlled. Universities were monitored. Political discussion was dangerous. Order was maintained not through consent, but through fear. Across Europe, Metternich wanted the same system: kings protected by collective force. Monarchs who had been removed were restored. Revolutions were treated as diseases to be crushed before they could spread. This entire philosophy became known as the conservative order. It did not aim to make societies just. It aimed to make them predictable. This period later became known as the Age of Metternich, a time when peace survived, not because people were satisfied, but because power stood united against change. Out of the Vienna settlement emerged something entirely new in world politics: the Concert of Europe. It was not a formal organization. No building housed it. No constitution defined it. Instead, it was a shared understanding among Europe's great powers that peace must be managed collectively. For the first time in history, nations agreed that international stability was a joint responsibility. Wars would no longer be launched blindly. Instead, crises would be discussed, decisions would be negotiated, interventions would be collective. A dangerous idea took shape alongside this system. If revolution threatened any monarchy, all monarchies had the right to intervene. This meant that a people's internal struggle was no longer just their own affair. It became an international crime. This created a new kind of Europe. Diplomacy became permanent. Conferences replaced coalitions. Kings who once fought each other now consulted each other. For a brief time, it worked. From 1815 onward, Europe did not explode into general war. Trade revived. Diplomatic relations stabilized. The scars of Napoleonic warfare slowly healed. But the price of this peace was silence. The silence of censored newspapers, crushed revolutions, and postponed freedom. By 1818, the Concert of Europe moved from theory into direct action through a series of international meetings that became known as the Congress system. The first of these took place at Aix-la-Chapelle in 1818, where an important and symbolic decision was made. France, once the enemy of all Europe, was officially forgiven and welcomed back into the circle of great powers. The occupation army was withdrawn from French soil, and the old Quadruple Alliance became the Quintuple Alliance. Peace now included the very nation that had once shattered it. But this peace was fragile. In 1820, revolution erupted in Naples and Spain, alarming conservative rulers. The great powers gathered again at the Congress of Troppau in 1820, where Austria, Russia, and Prussia declared that any nation which overthrew its monarch through revolution had no right to sovereignty and could be invaded. Britain objected to this principle but was outvoted. This decision led directly to the Congress of Laibach in 1821, where Austria received full approval to march its army into Italy and crush the Neapolitan Revolution. Absolute monarchy was restored by foreign force. The next crisis arose in Spain, where liberals forced the king to accept a constitution. The powers met again at the Congress of Verona in 1822, where France was authorized to invade Spain. In 1823, French troops crossed the border, destroyed the constitutional government, and restored the king's absolute rule. Through these congresses, Europe learned that the concert did not merely discuss peace, it enforced obedience. At the heart of the entire post-Napoleonic system lay one powerful idea that guided every decision made at Vienna and every intervention that followed: the balance of power. The leaders of Europe had learned, through painful experience, that the moment one nation grew too strong, war became inevitable. Napoleon's rise had proven this truth beyond doubt. Therefore, after 1815, every border, every alliance, and every military decision was shaped by one single question: does this disturb the balance? France was reduced but not destroyed, because a completely crushed France would have allowed Russia, Austria, or Prussia to dominate. Prussia was strengthened but not allowed to unite Germany, because a united Germany would have become unstoppable. Russia was allowed to expand into Poland, but was closely watched by Britain at sea and Austria on land. Even weak states were kept alive if their existence helped maintain equilibrium. Belgium was preserved as a neutral buffer. The Ottoman Empire was protected not because it was loved, but because its collapse would give Russia too much power. This balance turned Europe into a delicate scale where every gain had to be matched by a counter-gain somewhere else. Wars did not disappear, but they became limited, calculated, and controlled. For the rulers, the balance of power was not a moral principle. It was a survival strategy, and for a generation, it prevented another continental catastrophe. Behind the visible Congress system existed a hidden structure of binding promises and secret agreements that gave strength to the Concert of Europe. The most important of these was the evolving alliance system that began as the Quadruple Alliance between Austria, Prussia, Russia, and Britain. This alliance originally existed to prevent Napoleon's return, but after his final defeat, it transformed into a permanent guardianship of Europe's political order. When France was readmitted into diplomacy in 1818, the alliance became the Quintuple Alliance, turning 5 great powers into joint custodians of peace. Alongside this stood the Holy Alliance, inspired personally by the Russian Tsar. Though wrapped in religious language, its true purpose was political: to justify absolute monarchy and collective intervention against revolution. Together, these alliances created a powerful message. Kings would protect kings no matter where rebellion broke out. This network of treaties meant that no major diplomatic decision could be legally changed without the approval of all signatories. The Vienna settlement became sacred law. Even when the powers disagreed privately, they maintained outward unity. This created unprecedented diplomatic discipline, but also locked Europe into a rigid system where change became almost impossible without force. The alliances kept peace between rulers, but they also trapped millions under governments they were no longer allowed to challenge openly. The true brutality of the Concert of Europe became clear during the revolutionary wave between 1820 and 1822. In Italy, secret societies forced kings to accept constitutions, ending absolute rule. These events sent shockwaves through the courts of Europe. The concert reacted not with negotiations, but with armies. Austria marched into Naples under international approval and dismantled the constitutional government completely. The king was restored with full absolute power, and political leaders were imprisoned or exiled. At the same time, Spain experienced its own revolution when army officers forced the king to accept a liberal constitution. For 2 years, Spain tasted limited political freedom, but the concert could not tolerate this. With international authorization, France intervened militarily in 1823. French troops crushed the Spanish constitutional government and restored absolute monarchy once again. Across southern Europe, freedom collapsed under foreign boots. These interventions sent a terrifying message to the people of Europe. Revolution might rise, but it would never be allowed to rule. The concert had become a continental police force. Order was restored, stability was preserved, but the hatred of repression quietly spread among students, workers, soldiers, and intellectuals. The revolutions had failed, but the ideas behind them survived underground. By the mid-1820s, cracks slowly began to appear in the once solid wall of conservative unity. The first major test came with the Greek struggle for independence against the Ottoman Empire. This rebellion was different. It was not against a Christian monarch, but against Muslim rule. Russia felt religious and strategic sympathy for the Greeks, while Austria feared that supporting any rebellion would encourage revolutions elsewhere. Britain and France worried that Russian influence in Greece would shatter the balance of power. After years of tension, the great powers intervened together militarily in 1827. By 1830, Greece emerged as an independent state. For the first time, the concert had supported a nationalist revolution instead of crushing it. Soon after, another shock arrived in Belgium, where the people rebelled against Dutch rule in 1830. This time, Britain and France openly supported independence. Austria protested, but could not act. Belgium was created as a neutral state, officially accepted by Europe. These events revealed a new reality. Nationalism could no longer be permanently suppressed. The unity of the old conservative order had weakened. Metternich's rigid system was beginning to crack under the weight of a changing world. By the early 1830s, the first phase of the Concert of Europe had quietly reached its limits. Although its machinery still existed on paper, the spirit of complete conservative unity had faded. New revolutions erupted across Europe, most notably in France and Poland, proving that repression alone could not permanently silence political desire. Yet, despite its decline, the concert left behind an extraordinary legacy. For nearly 15 years, Europe had avoided a full-scale war between great powers, something previously unthinkable. Diplomacy replaced battlefield rivalry. Consultation replaced blind confrontation. The idea that powerful nations could jointly manage global stability became one of the most important political inventions in world history. Future international organizations would be built upon this same logic. However, the concert also revealed a dangerous truth. Peace without justice is fragile. The system preserved empires, but delayed the natural demands of nations and people. When those demands finally exploded later in the century, the wars would be even more destructive. The Concert of Europe succeeded in preventing immediate chaos after Napoleon, but it could not stop history itself from moving forward. It bought time for Europe, but it could not freeze change forever. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end of today's lecture. I truly hope this video helped you clearly understand how Europe tried to rebuild peace after Napoleon threw the Concert of Europe. If you found this lesson useful, please subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon so you never miss our upcoming lectures, and support this journey of learning by liking and sharing this video with your fellow aspirants. In the next video, we will move forward into the next major phase of European history and uncover even more important concepts for your CSS preparation. Until then, keep learning, stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next class.